Are you in the market for an Apple laptop? Don't make the wrong choice. Here are 5 Apple MacBooks which, in my opinion, you should never buy. Number 1. Any 13-inch MacBook Pros from 2016 to 2019. Given the success of the Retina MacBooks of 2012 to 2015, the next generation was predicted to continue this winning streak. Unfortunately, what came next were the Touch Bar Thunderbolt MacBooks. The mid-2010s were a time when Intel dominated the CPU market, and due to this control they had, innovation in the field slowed down as Intel sat on their lead. The CPU on a base model 2011 13-inch MacBook Pro was a dual-core Intel i5 with a base clock of 2.4 GHz and a boost of 3.0. 6 years later, and the 2017 13-inch had again a dual-core i5. The base clock this time was a 2.3 GHz and it boosted to 3.6. Yes, I know core count and clock speeds don't really tell the whole story, but we're not looking at what 6 years progress should show here. Seriously. Bearing in mind the weakness of most CPUs in these 2016 to 19 13 inches, as well as the fact that none of them had dedicated graphics, it's a good idea to stay away from these at the moment. People are still looking for up to 500 quid for these on eBay at times, which is among the worst deals you can get for Mac hardware these days. Oh, and let's not forget that replacement parts for these are through the roof in price. Screens can run you half the machine's cost, and things like RAM failure, which would be easily fixable on a Unibody machine, have to be fixed by replacing the logic board entirely. Number 2. The MacBook Air 2015 to 2017. These MacBook Airs come with dual-core i5s and i7s. Okay, for a decade-old computer, that's passable. But 2017? Avoid these like a burning building, man. You're getting a near-identical spec to the 2012 to 14 MacBook Airs, but paying sometimes 100 smackaroos or more, premium, just because the computer is newer on paper. It's worth noting that Apple first debuted the design of that entire MacBook Air family in 2008, and it hardly changed in the 9 years until 2017. And for a 2017 machine, those are some wide screen bezels. Along with that very early 2010s aluminium shine, it's hard to justify buying one of these, but perhaps a worse choice would be number 3, the 2015 to 17 MacBook 12-inch Retinas. These MacBooks are remembered as undesirable for all sorts of reasons. Yeah, we all know the keyboards were dodgy as can be, but performance-wise, here's 2 main reasons to avoid them. The battery life was, and always has been, very poor. Considering the size of these 12-inch devices, that's hardly surprising. When I got my 2015 MacBook with 450 battery cycles a few years ago, it lasted a maximum of 3 to 4 hours regular use on battery power. I dread to think about how poorly a more used one would perform. But what kind of processing power will you be able to make use of for those few hours? Next to none. The 2015 to 17 Retina MacBooks used Intel M series processors, which were a family of ultra-low power chips capable of very little. Here's a chart showing the base model's single-core CPU performance, barely keeping up with MacBooks up to 5 years older than them. Oh, and on top of all these problems, all of these Macs only came with a single USB-C port. That's aside from the headphone jack. Number 4, perhaps the most obvious to those who know a lot about older MacBooks. That's the 15 and 17-inch MacBook Pro 2011s. These MacBooks were, on paper, an absolute breakthrough in the world of laptops. This was the first year we saw quad-core processors in Apple laptops. That, the ability to support 16GB of RAM, and their pretty formidable AMD graphics chips gave them the edge over any other Apple laptop that had come before. Unfortunately, those dedicated AMD graphics chips were a problem in the long term. The temperatures they ran at, coupled with some generally poor soldering work from the factories, led to almost certain failure on every MacBook Pro 15 and 17-inch from 2011. I actually bought one in 2021 to upgrade and sell. A week after I got it though, lines down the screen. A week later, black screen. What did I expect, I guess? Number 5. This is bold, okay? The MacBook Pro 2012 Unibody. In the first 10 years of its life, there was a time when I couldn't recommend these enough to everybody. The benefit to buying one of these during the last decade or so was if something broke, you'd be able to replace it yourself, and cheaply too. There are 2 problems with this idea nowadays, though. Firstly, with upgradability comes a lot of extra heft. The Unibody 15 and 17-inch laptops add a lot of weight to your bag, as well as being very thick. But more to the point, how long do you expect to keep one of these for in 2023? If it takes a couple of years for something to go wrong and need replacing, you'll be buying parts for a 13-plus-year-old MacBook. It might make more sense to get the Retina 2012 MacBook instead at this point. It's lighter, the screen is far better, and has MagSafe too. Practically speaking, it's just the more modern MacBook, really. Okay, so some of these MacBooks do have specific use cases where you might want one. The Retina 12 inches are the smallest Apple laptops of all time, for example, so might be a nice choice for someone wanting something really light that runs full macOS. If you do intend to run your 2012 Unibody MacBook Pro for at least 2 years, yeah, it might not be such a bad idea to pick one up, as they can be slightly cheaper than the Retinas of the same year. Sometimes. Thanks a lot for watching. Take a look at this before you go. At the time of recording, my subscriber count is just above 900. I'm really massively happy to have so many people tuning into my stuff. But if you didn't know, I can't make any money from my videos until I hit 1,000 subscribers. I love making videos on this topic, but it can be quite taxing putting one together every single week, so if you would consider subscribing, I'd be very grateful. Thanks. Okay, see you guys next week.